Welcome, Rethreaded listeners. You're in for a treat. Today, we welcome our guest, Aaron Butler, who was born in London and was raised in Long Island, New York. Aaron earned his first leadership role at an organization, listen to this, at the age of 14 years old. Over the past 20 years, he has searched for what good leadership looks like. After spending over 13 years in corporate America, he recently joined his family's management and leadership consulting company, Carter Connections, to help take it to the next level. Today, we're going to talk a lot about Aaron's philosophy on leadership, which was derived from Robert Cates Greenleaf's essay, The Servant as a Leader. We're going to talk about Aaron's transformation from a self-serving leader to a servant leader. We're going to take a deep dive into the Rethreaded process and what that looks like in leadership. And it is a good one today. So welcome, Aaron Butler. Welcome to Rethreading Lives podcast. I am Kristen Keene, and today we have a very special guest, Aaron Butler, who is the COO of Carter Connections. He's going to be telling you a little bit about what that is. I know Aaron because we were in Life Work Leadership together, which is a Christian-based leadership development course here in Jacksonville. It's actually an international program. It's a 9-month program on leadership from a Christian perspective. And we were assigned to the same table. So we were in the same small group, table number 5. And
Yay, table 5.
Yay, table 5. It's a good table. And I asked Aaron to come on this podcast for many reasons, but the main reason is because out of all the people in our group, I feel like you led with vulnerability and like really honest. And when you shared some of your stories, like I learned from them, and it was like not just learned from them, but like personally convicted. Like, man, that is a courageous guy.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah. So that is Aaron. So Aaron, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, your company, who you are, any reflections?
What I'm honored from the things you said, because I felt intimidated in that group to some degree, because I feel like sometimes I have imposter syndrome, and I'm trying to kind of weed that out of my life. Currently, I am the CEO of Carter Connection. It is a family-owned company. It's run by myself and my mother, which is not something I like to tell a ton of people, but I think it's important to the story, important to my journey. And what we do is management and leadership training. We're a management and leadership training consulting company where we go into organizations that are having issues with employee satisfaction, disgruntled employees, and we train the managers on how to improve in their leadership. We have twofold as far as what we do. We also do labor relations training and nationally, which is we go into organizations that have disgruntled employees that are upset about something and they've looked to move towards unionization, and we educate them on that process, give them information about what the National Labor Relations Board looks like, what the National Labor Relations Act allows them to do, and what their rights are as workers, and help not only them, but the company navigate that process. So it's twofold. It's something that really does embody leadership, because with all the clients that we've met with and worked with, employees that are upset because their manager hasn't treated them with the right respect. That is the fulcrum of their frustration. And helping companies navigate that and helping managers become leaders, because there's a difference between a manager and a leader. Mm-hmm. And helping managers become leaders is what I've been passionate about for as long as I can remember. And my mother started this business in 2017. I was working in corporate America, and I was successful. I was having success and making money and moving in the right direction. And after COVID, things kind of changed in my company. The values changed. The things that I was proud to be a member of that family changed. We didn't take care of customers as we should have. We didn't take care of our employees as we should have. We were only focused on profit and how to make more money. And when I looked around, I realized I was losing a part of myself and I couldn't do it anymore. And luckily, my mother had started this business and was in a position where she could not pay me the type of money I was making, but be able to, felt comfortable taking that big pay decrease and trying to do something that I could make into my own and create something special.
And you believe in.
And yeah, of course, I believe in it because she raised me, right? So the values that have been instilled by her. So I knew what she was doing when she started this company, as far as saying, I want to get into leadership training. I want to help people with their communication. She wrote a book called It's Not Just What You Say. And she wrote that back in 2018. And I read the book. I started handing it out to all my employees saying, hey, you should read this book because it's going to improve your communication better than me just talking to you about it. Read this. And the employees that read it loved it, right?
So we need to stop here and do a plug. What's it called?
It's Not Just What You Say.
Okay, by
Marcia Carter.
Marcia Carter, okay.
Yes.
Your mom.
My mom. And outstanding book. It's available on Amazon. Feel free to get it. It's really cheap too. And when she wrote that book, it kind of sparked a light in me saying, you know what, maybe I can join her in this venture at some point. So it was always in the back of my head. And then as things started deteriorating after COVID, I recognized, okay, this was the time. This was the time for me to do it. Me and my wife, we had our foundation relatively set as far as what we were trying to accomplish as a unit. And I took a leap of faith, and it's been 2 years, and it's been the best 2 years of my life. And thankfully, I got to be a part of Life Work Leadership and meet some wonderful leaders in this city, because it really pushed me into high gear to kind of be around like-minded people, which is one of the biggest part of what we talk about when it comes to leadership is being around like-minded people. One of the valuable laws of growth from John Maxwell is to be around like-minded people. So,
which is, I mean, a tenet of the rethreaded process, right? Community.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, a community of people who will both love you in the hard, but also push you to be who you're created to be.
Yes.
Yeah.
And get that out of you, and you can do the same for them. And that's why I loved being in Life Work. Life Work completely changed my life. It was amazing.
And maybe that's why it was so. I liked being a part of Table 5 and being with Aaron, because I did watch it spark something in you, and I was like, oh, okay.
Every meeting sparked something in me. Every in-between meeting that we had.
I loved our in-between meetings.
It was so good. And it gave me the opportunity to get to know everyone at the table, because we all come from different backgrounds. And that's what I love about what I do for work as well, is because I travel. For instance, I'm actually heading to the airport after this to go to Boston.
Cool.
But I get to go to different parts of the country and meet people that have a different background from me, and see that at the core, we're all the same. We all want to live a good life, take care of our family. And then when I get a chance to be around Christians and we're able to talk on that level, really dive into how God has impacted your life, what's God telling you today, and things like that, it's be revolutionary.
So good. I have so many questions like going around in my head, because I honestly didn't know it was you kept saying family company. I didn't know who was the family. So I didn't know that your mom founded it. So your mom founded a leadership consulting company.
Yes.
That goes in and helps companies kind of essentially rethread their business.
Yes.
Who is your mom?
So
this feels out of the norm, honestly. I think looking at it, it feels very normal for who she is. And I love my mother, which if she watches this or listens to it, she's going to love this. I love my mother. My mother is probably one of my heroes. She moved to this country when she was 22 years old from London, from England. And she moved here because America was always the place she wanted to be, which you hear that, and she grew up in England, which is a developed country and all that stuff.
but she knew she wanted to be in America, and she was a radiologist by trade. She took x-rays. So I might be using the wrong word. I'm not a doctor. But so she took x-rays and she worked her way up in healthcare. So she started in Delaware, then she ended up moving to New York, and she worked at a hospital for 25 years, 20 some odd years. And then from there, she went into she was in management throughout the time. She got supervisor, manager roles in the hospital. And then she ended up teaching students how to take x-rays. And then from there, she got into sales, where she was selling imagery services to hospitals for a company there. And then when my stepfather retired, they moved to Florida, and she was working for HCA. And she was a vice president of sales to some degree at HCA. And it got to a point where she decided it was time for her to leave. She was closer to retirement age. She was, at that point, probably mid-50s, like 52, 53. And
that's close to retirement? That's only 4 years from me. I was like, all right.
Well, I think I guess you were retired at 65, right? But for her, it was at that time where she wanted to do something else.
There was a third chapter. We've been starting, a lot of women that I've been talking to, when they get into their 50s, it's the start of their third chapter.
My sister, I think, was just finished undergrad or was about to finish undergrad.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It was just time for her to do something else, right? And she left that job, and she created an opportunity. She said, I want to empower people. I want to empower people to be the type of leaders that they want to be. And she started with a nonprofit. And from there, she met people. She lives in Central Florida, so she started networking and met people, and she met someone who was doing labor relations consulting. And she said, and they said, you'd be great because you're good with talking to people, and we can teach you all the stuff about labor relations and the National Labor Relations Act. And she learned all that stuff, and she recognized this was an opportunity, that there was a leadership vacuum at a lot of organizations. A lot of frontline managers just didn't have the interpersonal skills to give employees the tools that they needed to feel successful, to feel happy in the workplace. And she said, this is an opportunity I think I'm good at teaching people that. And she took a leap of faith. And
does she have a British accent?
She does.
Americans love that too.
They do love that.
So she can probably say really hard things.
And everyone loves what she's saying.
No.
and she just took a leap of faith and said, God, if this is the way you're going to lead me, I'm going to go. And she's a woman of faith, which set the foundation for my faith, right? And she just took a chance, and she started networking and meeting people. The challenge, that the reason why I'm here and why I've taken her on, is she's good at talking to people and going out, but the business aspect of it, the doing things like this, like putting yourself out there, and she becomes hesitant. So I'm the person that's taking it that step further. And we've done a really good job networking and really good job marketing and really good job putting together a whole leadership development program. It's called the Journey to Leadership. And it really outlines the journey from being just a manager and how you get to leadership. And the foundation is servant leadership.
Yeah, I think I'm a bad manager and a good leader.
So I was actually thinking about this coming here, that I actually think you're a great leader. I don't think you're a good leader. I think you're a great leader. I think you have a vision for Rethreaded, and the people that you bring in, but because they have been affected by the terror of
trafficking
and experiencing that, they are invested in your vision. And they're doing whatever it takes to push the vision forward. And that's what a good leader has to do. They have to create a shared vision for their team. And they need to create a shared vision with their team to some degree. And I think you've done a great job with that. Every time I hear you speak, every time I listen to the podcast, I hear it in everything that you're saying, the people that you're talking to and the people that you've had come on the podcast that are a part of Rethreaded. You can hear the conviction for what you're trying to do. And anyone that I meet that knows you and your name comes up, they always say the most amazing things about you.
Yeah, but I didn't manage them. I'm not a good manager.
What makes you think you're not a good manager?
Oh, ask anyone who I've managed. I'm just not organized. And so what I found is my sweet spot in my world. Like if I'm going to excel in my job, give me no more than 2 things that I can just pour everything who I am into those things. And then I can be a very successful leader. But like a COO, like my COO at my company, Jason, phenomenal leader and phenomenal manager. Like has his calendar planned out to the minute and can hold all these different parts and give clarity for each part.
Yeah.
Whereas I was just listening to this Andy Stanley podcast about clarity is kindness. And that's one of my biggest things is because I jump in and then figure it out as I go along. I'm an entrepreneur at my heart. And Jason, literally, I don't think he could do that because like that's not how he's wired.
Yeah.
And he is an excellent manager and makes sure there is clarity on everyone's level. So I don't know. Maybe you have some thoughts about this.
Well, first off,
yeah,
the first step is awareness.
Yeah.
And you have that awareness.
Yeah.
And I would surmise and I would say that being a great leader is more important than being a great manager. Because if you're a great leader, you get the right team around you.
Yeah.
Which evidence proves that you've done that,
yeah.
right?
I literally will put my team up against anyone. Yeah.
And that is what leadership is. So I define leadership as guiding a group of people on a shared journey powered by a shared vision. And that's exactly what you're doing. So you don't have to be a great manager. I'm using air quotes. I guess this is a video. You don't have to be a great manager in order to be a great leader. But if you're a bad manager, if you're a bad leader, you can't be a great manager at all. But I would argue that you are a great manager because you've put people in the right spot, which is...
I guess, yeah. And I'm still working through that, I think, and what it means. Because I feel like I also have imposter syndrome. Like if anyone really knew me, they would not think what you think. So I'm working through that now. I am working through that shame. Have you listened to the episode of the podcast where it was me, Steven, and Jason? We were talking about leadership.
I think so. I think he's the one that mentioned... I know where he works, but I don't want to say the wrong thing.
Kairos, yeah.
Yeah, okay, yes.
And I was like, well, because I always have this idea of what a leader is, and I lose earrings all the time.
Yes.
So that was the joke.
That was the joke. You did say that.
You can still be a leader and lose earrings. So I've always had a lot of shame around my inability to have be organized and so since I'm not that great about providing structure, sometimes when I'm managing, I provide too much structure and I become really controlling.
Yes.
So that's why I'm not a great manager under people. I'm over people because it brings out that part of me.
But the fact that you're aware of it and the fact that you've taken steps to avoid it, right?
Yeah.
That means you are a great manager. Because being a great manager is not something that happens and then you're done being a manager, right? We're human. We all fall short of the glory of the Lord, I like to say.
Yeah.
So we're going to make mistakes. I used to think I was a great manager. And then I started analyzing some of the things that I've done as a manager. And I've recognized that I'm still growing as a leader. I'm still growing as a manager. I'm still growing as someone who is there to guide people through their journey, whatever the case may be. And it's never complete. That's the point of the journey. It's a consistent journey. So as you get to a point where from the outside looking in, you're successful, you have this organization that's doing so many good things, right? So of course you're going to falter as a human. But the fact that you are aware of it, you analyze it, you say, okay, where could I have done better that day? that means you're growing, and you're growing as a leader, and that growth is never ending. I'm reading a book called The Wisdom of the Bullfrog by retired Admiral McRaven. And in it, he talks, and this is someone who's commanded fleets of the Navy, right? And high up in the military. And he talks about the moments that he's fallen short and the experiences that he's had where he hasn't been successful and how he's had to deal with that. And leadership is never ending. It's always continuous. And that's why I love what I do, because I learn something new every day. I learn something new about myself, something new about the people I'm working with, the organizations I'm working with. I get to learn something new every day about what it takes to be a leader. And there's always a different situation that pops up.
So in the rethreaded process, we have the 5 elements, and then we have, and the rethreaded process is kind of like what you do, like all about reaching your potential. And in my experience of working with survivors of human trafficking, of sitting with people and hearing their stories, blame and shame is really like the stealer of potential. Like when you're sitting with people and you're working with organizations and individuals to reach their potential, how do you see blame and shame kind of play into that? And maybe you're seeing something different that kind of holds people back?
When you feel like you aren't good enough, when you feel like you've done something wrong, and when you have someone like me come into an organization and I'm dealing with a frontline manager, they didn't ask me to be here, right? So they're seeing their employees that are disgruntled, that are calling out a lot, quitting a lot of high turnover. It feels like, okay, what am I doing wrong? A lot of times it's not so much what someone's doing wrong, it's they're just not doing enough of the right things and not putting themselves in other people's shoes. But the best example I can give is actually one that came from my experience in life work, right? I was working for a company, and I had an employee that I was kind of pushed to promote, that I didn't want to promote. And I didn't like this person as a person. We always butt heads. We would always argue. He would disagree with decisions I would make and have to tell me why my decision wasn't right. And we end up getting once into like an actual screaming match. And then the 20 years I've supervised and managed people, I don't think I've ever yelled at anybody, because it's not in my nature. It's something that I'm afraid of doing. I'm also a big guy and I don't like to scare people. So having that moment happen, I had immense shame. I had immense guilt about my reaction to that. And it took me a long time to find the strength to get over that. And we were at a LifeWork event, a LifeWork session, and they talked about being gracious and having gratitude towards someone who you would never have gratitude with, right? And they gave us a gift card to give to someone, the last person we would ever give this gift card to. And in that moment, I recognized that was an opportunity for me to rid myself of some shame, to take the time to apologize to someone who I've wronged, regardless of if I think they've wronged me as well. And I called this person out of the blue, hadn't talked to them in a year and a half, and they were very gracious.
What did you say? I have to did you call a cell phone? Did you call his work? And what's your opening line?
So I was lucky. A friend of mine was managing him now.
Okay.
So I called my friend first and said, hey, this is what I'm thinking about doing. I'm thinking about coming to see this employee. And
like you in person. This isn't on the phone.
I went to see them in person, but I called my friend and said, hey, I'm thinking about seeing this in person and giving them a gift card because our relationship wasn't great. About the argument we had, and it's on my heart. God's put it on my heart to do something to close that chapter, to some sort of speak. And they said it would be a great idea. So I got the okay that it was a good idea. So that made me feel good. I waited about 4 days because I knew I wanted to do it, but I didn't really want to do it.
Yeah.
And after 2 or 3 signs letting me know that this is what I needed to do, I texted him and said, hey, I know this is kind of random, but I'd love to come see you. What day is a good time? What day is a good day, and what time is a good time to see you at the office? He gave me the time and date, and it was the next day at probably like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, whatever it was. And I walked in, and remember, this office is full of people that I know, that I've managed, right? And saying hi to them all, saying hi, and then he walks in. I'm like, hey. He's like, hey. I'm like, can we just sit in your office? And we sat in his office, the office that we had many times gotten into screaming matches in, right? And I sat down in the chair, and he sat down, and I said, listen, I'm here to apologize. I'm here to apologize. And I told him the whole story of life work and the process I was going through. I'm going through this process, and it's been amazing for me. But what I've learned is that I need to have more gratitude and be more generous to people that I might not necessarily have a great relationship with. So this is me just kind of being a little bit vulnerable and having this conversation with you. And he said, listen, I've grown up so much since we last talked. And I remember that fight, and I was wrong he took accountability for certain things. I took accountability for certain things and gave a handshake. And I said, okay, this is great. And I left. And then I had no plans to ever call him again. But I think we both left feeling so much better, because as a leader, as a person, when you hold into that resentment, it eats away at you. So
I was just like thinking this through, and I've just had this conversation a little bit this morning about, so in the rethreaded process, the way out of blame and shame is courage, imagination, and empathy. And really all those tools allows you to take responsibility. And that's exactly what you did. You had this blame and shame, and you were able to, I think, use your courage and take responsibility and pull both of you in some ways out of the blame and shame. Because I'm sure what I'm finding is if you don't deal with it, it turns to bitterness.
Yes, it does. It turns to bitterness. It turns to anger. And all those things are terrible for leadership.
Yeah.
All those things are terrible for managing a team. And when you are managing a team, there's going to be conflict. There's going to be disagreements. And that's why shared vision is so important, because when your fulcrum is the shared vision, when the priority is, okay, we are trying to impact X, right? We're trying to improve the lives of people that have been through sex trafficking. All conflicts can be resolved if the decision is clear that that's what that's going to lead to, right? So it's just about communicating.
Filter.
Yeah.
So when you go into companies, do they often lack vision?
So companies don't lack vision. The management levels, the bureaucracy, dilutes the vision. And that's what if you go talk to someone in a C-suite of a big organization and they say, what's the vision for your company? They're going to tell you all the pie in the sky. That sounds great, right? But the management levels below it filters it out and makes it about what people are scared of. If people are scared, we're not growing enough as a company, right? We don't have enough growth. That's the fear that's coming out. And then they push the fear down on the frontline managers. And the frontline managers are the ones that deal with the employees directly. So if, for instance, if it's, hey, we need to process this many units of widgets, the vision, the priority that you're getting from those frontline managers is push the widgets. When it should be, all right, our vision is to impact the world in a positive way. And the way that we're going to impact the world is by making these widgets. And we have to make X amount to do it. But the cause is there, not the effect. And that's what the problem is. That's what gets diluted. So what I do a lot of times is reinforce what the vision is and ask these frontline managers, what do you think the priority is for your boss? And when they say things like profit, when they say things like labor hours, then you know that that's what they're afraid of. That's what they're afraid of getting in trouble for not doing. And you have to change that culture. So you have to work your way up. That makes sense?
Oh, yeah. I mean, on so many levels, because even in the nonprofit, I mean, everyone has a very strange view of nonprofits. And I was like, we got to make money too. And have goals. And so I think in my management, I'm so driven, and I have a lot of times I have a lot of fear. And literally in my leadership, I've just run over people. And my vision sometimes doesn't match my actions, and there's a disconnect. And people know that. And it hurts people, and it doesn't create the kind of culture that changes lives.
But again, I'll say the fact that you are aware of that is
I've learned the hard way. Yeah,
of course. I feel like there's when you're going through those moments, right? When it's okay, I'm so fearful of X happening, and that's causing me to change my management style. That just requires a moment of self-reflection. And when I do the journey to leadership, the first part is growth, right? It's awareness is the title, is the headline, right? But then you have self-reflection, you have perception of your team, and you have understanding your team. And when you do those moments of daily reflection, you're understanding, and you do it whichever way you want. Like people meditate, people work out. I know you go swimming, right? So when you have those moments where you're able to be just in your thoughts and think, okay, what type of leader was I yesterday or for this past week? You take those moments and say, okay, that's where my misstep is. I'm going to have to correct that. And whatever that correction looks like based on your business is what you have to do. If that means having a conversation with someone who you might have pushed in the wrong direction, or saying, hey, listen, last week I said X, but we actually need to do Y, and this is why. It's okay to correct these things and be a manager that's vulnerable and a leader that's vulnerable, because that vulnerability makes you real and then earns trust from your team. And then when you earn trust, it's so much easier to have difficult conversations because they trust that you have their best intention in heart because you guys are moving towards that shared vision.
Then how do you, because openness on the rethreaded process, that's like a key component, but how in a work culture do you create vulnerability? Like it's almost like against everything that business says. Like what does vulnerability look like in the workplace right in that?
So I disagree that it's against everything that business says, because creating openness in conversations just requires someone to be honest, ethical, and truthful, right? Which I guess honest and truthful is the same definition, but you know what I'm trying to say.
I know, yeah.
A good example of that I've experienced. So I got my first job when I was 13 years old. I became a supervisor when I was 14. And every job I've had since then, I've been in a supervisor or a manager role. So I've been managing people for the last 22 years. And I was 16, so I was a kid. And I was managing this young man. He was younger than me. And we worked at a water park. Working at a water park is the most fun I've ever had in my life. I just want to put that out there. But he always seemed so miserable, and I didn't understand it because we're at a water park.
What water park did you work at?
So on Long Island.
Oh, Long Island, because you grew up in New York.
Yeah, so on Long Island, there's a water park out in Riverhead called Splish Splash. Yes. It's still there as far as I know, and it's been there for. You could have told me it's been there 50 years, and I believe you. I don't know how long it's been there.
Okay, but Splish
Splash Water Park. And I was just like, hey, just started talking to him. How do you like school? What grade you in? All this other stuff, just to get to know somebody. And I asked him how he liked working here as the conversation was going on. He's like, oh, it's fine. My parents are concerned, though, because I have a black supervisor. And I looked around, because obviously I'm the only black supervisor at this place. And I looked around and I said, how do your parents know I'm black? They never met me. And he was like, oh, I told them. And I was taken aback. Again, I'm 16 years old. I've been black my whole life, but it was the first time someone's very casually, very normally said it. And do I think that was the reason why he was miserable at Splish Splash? No, I think he was just a miserable person. But when he said that, it gave me an insight to who he is and where he's from. It didn't change anything because, you know what? My goal, and this is something about me, my goal was to prove his parents wrong, to be a great manager so that he would go home and tell his parents how great this black supervisor was and how wonderful I am and how nice I am to him and how I make him feel great, right? And that's how I've lived my life for a long time, till probably my late 20s, where it's always a chip on my shoulder, trying to prove myself. And that ability to just have a conversation with someone that's a reasonable conversation and allow that person to talk gives way to that openness. I've learned so many things from employees. I've had employees call me when someone has passed away in their house. I've had employees call me when they've had medical emergencies and then tell me. I've had an employee call me when they got arrested and tell me I was their first call. That's not because of anything other than giving people that latitude to have real conversations with me, and also having real conversations and being vulnerable. I like to think that's sometimes my superpower, because I can give a piece of myself to someone so that they feel comfortable with me, so that we can have a real conversation. So I don't think it's being that openness is a bad thing. I think it gives way to really impact other people's lives.
I don't think it's normal though, is it? In the workplace? In corporate world?
I will say I don't think it's normal either. I think it's something people need to work on. I don't think I haven't had many managers or bosses that have actually taken an active interest in me as a person. But I also have been the type of person that has forced people to take an active interest in me. I will force you to care about me. I will force you to know stuff about me that you may not have cared to know, because I know that that's the only way that I'm going to move forward and feel valued as an employee. So, for good or for bad, that's how I try to treat people, because I try to treat people the way I want to be treated. Now, I don't push people who don't want to talk. I've had employees that definitely, when I've asked them questions, give me one-word answers. And I was like, I just asked you how your day was. You didn't have to tell me fine. Like, let's elaborate. But those people, you just have to navigate a little bit differently. You have to earn their trust through work-specific actions, whether that means helping them when they're feeling like their work's up to here and they feel overwhelmed, or taking the time to coach them up on something specific. That those moments that you just have to find those opportunities.
It sounds, what I've been thinking a lot about lately is, well, there's two things. The first thing is, like, it's almost like you create space for people.
Yes.
You're not half listening, but you are carving out space, and you're going to hold it for them, and they can be there, they're safe, and you see them.
Yes. So that's actually what I'm doing right now for a company in Boston. I call it pulsing, where they're looking for feedback on what their employees are actually thinking. And companies do these employee opinion surveys all the time, and they're so generic, and people feel forced to do them, and they don't actually respond the way that they need to. And what I do is I'm at these companies and I'm having real conversations with their employees while they're in their workspace, and finding out a little bit about them, finding what their challenges are, what frustrates them, what bothers them. And then everything's anonymous but not confidential, right? I don't use names. In fact, I don't remember the names. I've spoken to like 100 people already. But it's about saying, okay, this is where this person is. This is where the consensus is of the organization, of your people. They're upset about this policy. They think they're not being heard on this situation. And then that gives the organization an opportunity to address those. And then when they get addressed, immediately the employee's like, oh, you guys listen to us. That guy that was walking around talking to us for 4 or 5 weeks, he actually did something.
And then is the point of that to build trust so then the managers and the leadership can then build on what you were able to come in and kind of do? Okay.
The managers, the frontline managers specifically, will be able to say, hey, look, these are the things that we did. We are trying to listen. I know we haven't done a good job in the past, but feel comfortable having those conversations with us, and we're going to try to do better to ask you better questions. And I coach people on what questions to ask, how to engage with employees.
So you're remarkably aware for not that old of a...
I'm 36.
I guess so.
I don't know if that's old.
I don't know if that's old. You're right. You're a good sweet spot.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is from also your childhood.
Yes.
Like you're 13, 14, thinking about how you want to. So where my questions are, I have lots of questions related, but where did the chip come from and how did it go away?
Where did the chip come from? That's a great question. So I grew up in a time where I was told by CNN, the media, right, and that I'm either going to be dead or in jail by the time I'm 21.
Because you're a black man.
Because I'm a black man in America. So for me, it was about not falling into that stereotype and proving what I perceived people were thinking about me wrong. Now, I understand most people probably weren't thinking that, right? They don't, even if they didn't know me, they weren't thinking that. But I perceived that's how other people looked at me. And my family, I love my family. My family is very complicated in its beautiful way. My dad had drug problems for a lot of my younger life and a couple years while I was in college. And I spent a lot of time in Narcotics Anonymous meetings when I would see him on the weekends after he got clean. And that opened my eyes to understanding that the world is very complicated and life is very complicated. And I learned that when I was 12, 13 in these rooms where you're seeing all peoples of all walks of life that have had severe drug issues and have hit rock bottom, and they're telling their story in the most raw and honest way. And when I got to experience that, I understood that I'm so fortunate. I'm so blessed. And I understood the pitfalls that were going to be coming my way as I got older because of the stories I was able to hear from them. So you take that chip of feeling, okay, the world thinks I'm one thing because they just see me.
And did you have any experiences in your life that proved that this media lens was right? Like, did you have any other experiences? Well, maybe in the water park.
Yeah, I mean, I've been pulled over a bunch. When I was in high school, this is a dumb story, but it's true. When I was in high school, I have two best friends growing up. We were all three of us were young black from Long Island, and we were in a park when we were 17 at dusk. It was probably nighttime. And we were there with two girls, and one was white. And we were drinking Mike's Hard Lemonade, which is probably not something you should be drinking under 21, but it was basically juice. And undercover cops pulled up, and they put us three in handcuffs, and not the girls. But I didn't perceive it as racism or anything like that because one girl was black, one girl was white. I just assumed that we're the males, so we were bigger threat. Mm-hmm. Yeah. They ran our names for warrants. None of us had warrants. We were all good kids. And they took us out the handcuffs and sent us about away. Right? I don't think I ever told my mother that story, but I think if I wanted to, I could say, oh, that was a story where I was whatever I was, mm-hmm. right? And I didn't feel that way at the end of the day. Did we joke about it? Were we annoyed about it? Yes, but I didn't feel that way. I let it go, right? It is what it is. Nothing bad happened to me. I've worked in customer service for a long time. I've been called things by customers before. I've only reacted once negatively. Most of the time, I just think it's funny because, unfortunately, I'm on this side of the counter, so I'm making the decision if you're going to use our services or not. So, no, nothing really reinforced it. I've had family members that have gone to jail, and that probably reinforced it for me, right? I've seen both older and younger cousins. And I don't want to speak wrongly because I'm trying to think of all my cousins. I think there's only been like 2 of us that haven't actually been incarcerated at some point. So that made it real for me, right? I know for a fact that people that look like me are going to jail. People in my family have gone to jail. I've had uncles that have passed away early. Like, it's not something that is unfounded, and it has impacted me, right? It's definitely something that I carry, but I also know that I'm blessed. And my mother has a saying that we're blessed and highly favored, right? And I know that I'm lucky because there's no difference between me and my cousin that grew up in a different town, except the mother we had, really.
I was about to say, except the
parents,
your mom. Yeah,
my
your parents. Yeah.
And I believe in nature I believe in nurture over nature to some degree, because the same blood that runs through my vein runs through their vein. We have the same grandmother. My grandmother, love her. She's my last grandparent still alive.
She's still alive?
Yes.
Your mom's mom or your dad's mom?
My dad's mom.
Okay.
And she's given us, I talked to her the other day for Mother's Day, and she's given us all the same advice when it comes to financial freedom and investing in 401ks and all that stuff, and tells us to read things. And I'll call her, be like, hey, I read that thing you sent me. She's like, you're the only one that ever read it. But there are a couple of us, I know for a fact there are a couple of us that do read it, but they don't like to give her some of the hey, I read it, grandma. But me, maybe it's just because I like to get the accolades.
I love it. Because I can see that. I just want to talk about with your mom a little bit in relation to race, because she came from England at the age of 22 as a young Black female.
Yes.
Outside of the culture of America.
Yes.
How has that shaped her life?
So she actually talked about this. She came up to Jacksonville and went to Girls of Virtue.
Oh, yeah.
And spoke to some young ladies
Awesome.
there. And she actually talked about it was a culture shock.
Mm-hmm.
And something that I highlight. So my father's American, so I like to put that out there. My father's African American. My mother's Caribbean by kind of heritage, right?
Okay.
So my family came from Antigua and Nevis, which are islands in the Caribbean. And then they moved to London, and that's where they met and had her. So for her coming over here, people would look at her and assume she was Black American, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then she would speak, and they'd be like, oh. But it didn't change the fact that she was another. She was telling the story about how when she was working at a hospital, the doctor invited that department over for, like, I guess a holiday party type thing, and she was the only person not invited. And this was back in the 80s, right? So you could probably get away with it more so than you wouldn't really get away with it now, right? Mm-hmm. And that was her first understanding of, okay, I'm not in that crowd. I'm not part of the establishment, I guess to say. And when she first went for her first supervisor job, she got beat out. And the second one, she got beat out. And she perceived it as something that was more so than just her skills. It was something else. And that just taught her what I think my grandparents taught her. Because going to England during the Windrush era, it was similar as far as you're an other. Keep your head down, do what you need to do, and take it from them. But take it from them in a way that's undeniable. They can't not give you the job. And that's what she's instilled in me. And I think that's why a lot of what I pay attention to is other people's perceptions of me or what I think about, and like paying attention to the way people, the things that people say that you need to read between the lines to understand that I can only control myself. I can't control what someone else thinks. If they're going to judge me based off something that they don't know about me, right? All I can do is outwork them and do my job better than they've done their job. And that's where the chip came from. And that's how I've did all through the front half of my career. I didn't get rid of that chip till I got to the position that I was trying to get to at the start. And then when I got to that position, it was like, okay, I could kind of lay back. And that's when I started crafting how I manage people and how I lead people. Because up to that point, even though I was managing other people, they were small teams. And at the end of the day, even if that team wasn't performing the way I wanted them to perform, I could do enough of the work to make it look good so that I can get promoted. And that's not a great way, in my opinion, to manage people. But I had to learn that.
So that was from approving yourself leadership to the servant leadership.
Yeah, it was more selfish, and to be completely blunt. It was selfish, and it was based on what's good for me, not what's good for the team, not good for the organization. But I kind of fell into the right way to do it, because the reason I got promoted is because I had a team around me that was really bought into getting me promoted. The shared vision was to get Aaron promoted, which, again, it was selfish.
That's leadership.
It was selfish, but I had that buy-in from them that they trusted me because I had built a relationship with them. I had cared about them. I had taken that time, and I did all that stuff because that's the way that I knew that I can get the thing that I wanted. Now it's not about me. It's not about what's good for me. It's now about how can I... Robert K. Greenleaf has in The Servant as Lead, he has this: if we want to create a more just society, one that's more caring, provides people with opportunities to grow, we have to elevate the servant as a leader. And a society that is more just, that is more caring, and provides people with that opportunity to grow is what we need, as I think people need in general. And when I read that, start of my 30s, when I read that, I understood, that's the type of world that we need, not a world that's driven by what's good for me. How can I be self-servant, and how can I get what I want? And I think people still have that mentality, and my vision is to just create more servant leaders that are serving their mission, their vision, because I recognized the way that I was managing was doing a disservice.
Do you have concrete examples about what changed in your life? Did outwardly things change?
Yes.
Or just inwardly?
No, outwardly things changed. Mm-hmm. I learned how to listen.
Yeah.
And actually sit in silence with somebody and allow them to tell me what they were thinking and how they felt, and understand what they envisioned for themselves, not me putting my vision for them onto them. I became more patient. There were times where I'm someone that if we're going to say, hey, we're going to move that screen, I'm already up moving the screen before even taking the time to really think about it. I'm now someone who takes the time to say, okay, what's the best way to go about that? Because while time is of the essence, if you want to do it right, you have to do it the first way.
Take the time. So, like, be intentional. Yeah.
Be intentional. The law of intentionality. Yes. Yeah. And I cared about kind of like how I carried myself. That's there's a level of taking care of yourself. And there were times when I first started working for that company, young, I was 22, 23, where I'd come in like my shirt wrinkled, and that also matters too. Your image matters. You have to take pride in the way that you present yourself. So little things like that became tweaked. Phrase.
Do you have any in your work that you're doing? Do you have is there a common mistake that people are making in their leadership that you feel like you're just coaching over and over again?
It's awareness.
It's awareness.
It's awareness. People are so unaware of what they're doing. And when things get overwhelming, awareness really goes out the window.
Yes, it does. Oh, it does.
Because your instincts are just taking over to some degree.
Yes.
So
there's no intentionality. There's no space. You're not taking time. Oh.
And the best way to learn awareness is self-reflection and having that daily. And because once you're through the wilderness, once you're through the craziness that's happening, right? Sometimes people don't even take the time to sit and say, wow, okay, after action review, how was that? They just look at the end product and say, we got it done. It's fine.
Yeah.
And they do it all over again.
Yeah, that's what I was doing.
That awareness piece is so huge. And also people don't really like doing self-reflection because they learn something about themselves that they might not like.
And it's very uncomfortable.
It's very uncomfortable. And I think, and everyone says they know they're not perfect, right? Humans will have no problem. Oh, I'm not perfect. If you're not perfect, it's okay to work towards perfection. You're never going to get there, but you can improve and grow. And so Marcia, and I sometimes refer to my mother as Marcia.
Okay.
So Marcia's doing. So
this is like your when she's like the business Marcia.
Yes.
Okay.
Marcia's doing a mastermind. So she's a certified John Maxwell team member.
So cool.
And she's doing a mastermind for the 15 laws of growth. It's a virtual mastermind, and it starts this Thursday. It's every Thursday for 6 weeks. And that's what we're focused on. And the second law of it is the law of awareness. Because once you are aware and once you take the time to become aware, that's when you can start fixing things. And so that's what people have the challenge with the most time. And I was talking to a manager at the organization I'm at right now, and I asked him, it's like, what do you think your biggest area of opportunity is? And he said, you know what? I think I need to get to know my people a little bit better. I just get so busy and I don't take the time to talk to them. It's a wave and I keep it moving. And I said, well, you're sitting here talking to me for 25 minutes. Is this time not being utilized the right way? It's like, no, I'm good right now. Does this happen every day? Yeah. So every day you could take 10 minutes and talk. You could take 25 minutes to talk to probably 2 employees. And if you do that consistently, imagine how much you'll know about your employees and how much they'll know about you and how much they'll be willing to work for you even that harder. And he was like, oh, I never thought about that. So it's not necessarily not being unaware, but taking that awareness to the next step to realize that there is an opportunity there. And
I find the greatest people, I get to sit here with the greatest people, is they all in some way, shape, or form have figured out how to be intentional with their time. To everything they do is on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
I remember reading this book Traction. It's how to put structure into your business. And I remember reading that book and being the first line is do you control your business or does your business control you?
That question.
Yeah. And it's the flip-flop of training that manager to be in control of their time. Because what I do when especially when I never want to start anything again, but I start something, I jump in and there's all this pressure on my time. And then, I always let that pressure, not always, that's a lie. I tend to let that pressure control me instead of me flipping the script and I'm going to control my time and create space for my people.
Yes. And you have to give yourself grace.
Yeah.
And when it comes to time management and actually managing time, that's an area that I absolutely am still working on.
Me too.
Every day. And I have a rule I don't set any meeting Monday before 11. Anything, if anyone calls me, say, hey, I'd like to meet for some coffee, or hey, there's this meeting here. If it's Monday before 11, I'll immediately say no, because I know if I don't start my week where I'm comfortable and I'm ready to go with eagerness, I'll feel like my whole week is off-centered. Now, not everyone has that luxury, which I understand. But you have to, everyone has to find something to have their time start off feeling right. Whether it's, if they start work on Monday, saying, you know what, Sunday, I need to be in bed by 9:30 because I want to wake up at X amount of time, at certain time, so I can start it. So that means that extra Netflix show on Sunday that I've been watching, I have to turn it off at 9:30. And little things like that will help control your time a little bit better. But it's also about just giving yourself grace and saying, you know what, whatever time frame I'm thinking it's in my head, if I say I need to do something in 3 weeks, I need to tell myself I need to do it in 6 weeks. Or 1 week, or then that's what I meant, 1 week, and then I'm able to kind of get there a little bit slower. I don't know. That's how I've handled time management, but it's hard. It's hard.
Yeah, and people are definitely more skilled at it than the other. But I like the point of, and this point comes up a lot, is like it's about the tiny little things. It's the half hour going to bed earlier. It's choosing not to be on my phone in the morning and going to exercise and making sure I'm spending some quiet space in the morning.
Yes.
Compared to my phone. I mean, it's not like these huge changes.
Well, my biggest issue is discipline. And I've been researching if discipline is an inherited trait or something that you could learn.
Nature versus nurture.
Because my brother, and he's my stepbrother, but we've grown up together. So I understand that we have different DNA. But my brother's so disciplined. So disciplined. He's always been this way, even when we were kids. When I would go visit my dad and I'd go in his room was organized and so neat. And and he's younger than me, and I was always just a little bit jealous. Like, how did you do this? Like, I just do it. Okay. So I look at that and I've started figuring out, okay, how can I be more disciplined? How can I be more consistent with working out, eating right, doing all the things that I know are good for me, but I tend to falter. I haven't come up with a solution yet, so don't expect a solution on this.
I was like, what did you
No, I don't have a solution yet. But in reading, what book was that in? 15 Valuable Laws of Growth. It's just doing it now. And that's what has kind of transformed me in the last 6 months as far as my mental state, is if it's something that I know I should be doing, I just have to do it right this second if I have the free second. When it pops into my head. So something for me, it's my weight. I struggle with my weight. So for me, it's, okay, I'm about to go out to eat. Don't say the next meal is when you're going to eat something right. Eat it now, right? If I'm saying, okay, I'm going to go to the gym. If it's 7:00 and I'm like, I'm going to the gym in the morning. Okay, I need to be in bed by 9:30. Do it now. Do whatever you need to do right now to make sure you're in bed at 9:30 so you can wake up at 5 to go to the gym. That's what I've been telling myself, because apparently discipline is not something you could just teach yourself, and you have to actually do it, is what I'm learning. And
then once you start to get wins, then you become more disciplined.
Yeah. So, and I do too. So that's why that's how I think people have to become more disciplined, is just by whatever it is that you're saying you're going to do, you have to put it into motion. Just put it into motion.
I know in some ways in my life, I'm really disciplined. And other times, I mean, I'm not. I mean, me and Jason Jones, my COO, are so different in some ways. Like we'll be at a meeting. I do it on purpose sometimes. And he is like everything stacked perfectly nice, like everything. And like, if it gets out of order, he like straightens it back up. And so sometimes just to mess with him, I'll be like, like move the pen. But his whole life is like that, like very orderly and no chaos. You go in my office, my house, and it's like, and I can be in a room in like 5 seconds and I'll mess it up in 5 seconds.
Well, is that a sign of genius?
That's what you keep saying. And I also have to remember I I always compare myself and want that. I want to be more like this.
Yeah.
Instead of figuring out how do I channel my inner genius
Exactly.
in my chaos.
And I talked about imposter syndrome. I don't know if it was when we were recording or before, but I compare myself to people all the time and think that I'm failing or not doing things the right way. I think once we realize, this is something that helped me. Once I've realized that everyone is human and going through something else that I'm unaware of, it allows me to push that feeling to the side. It doesn't get rid of that feeling. I always get that feeling at some point. But it allows me to push it to the side and say, okay, let me focus on what I'm doing, because I think I am good enough to some degree. I think I am capable. I think I am smart and organized and creative. I'm just not that type of smart, organized, and creative.
And that's what I was going to say. I wonder if one of your superpowers is because when you're going into these companies and you're navigating hard situations, I wonder if one of your superpowers, that is your superpower. And that's where you're actually really extremely disciplined, is your ability to go into situations and be cool.
Oh, yeah. It's fun.
That's a superpower. That's a discipline.
It is. I've never thought about it that way, but
discipline.
You're right. Like I love going to, because I've learned about some of the most interesting industries. I was working for a company that did phlebotomy, right? And talking to people that are taking blood all day. And I don't know anything about it, right? And I'm talking to them about that process and what it looks like and what struggles they have and all that stuff. And it's, to some degree, there's chaos going on around me, like the customer, patient there getting blood taken. There's 14 people outside. I'm like, I'm not trying to mess up your flow. This is interesting to me. And I like that level of chaos because it's something I like learning. I really do enjoy learning about different things and learning how things work, because it makes me smarter. It makes me think I know things.
Well, then I feel like you bring that into your people too. Like you like to know how people work.
Yes,
and that
I do.
Curiosity, I think. Maybe that's your discipline, the discipline of curiosity.
You know what it is? I love trying to figure out how people work.
Is that how you can come into, like, I'm assuming you come into some relatively hostile situations, and to hold curiosity, hold space?
Yeah, so a lot of times you'll find certain employees are really angry, right? And they have a lot of anger towards the company. And I come in and I'm like, hey, I'm Aaron. I'm working with this department to kind of understand some of the challenges that you're having. And they'll say, well, you did this, you did this, you did that, right? And I don't correct them ever. I take it in and I say, well, listen, I'm hearing what you're saying. And then I try to read between the lines and I give them that space and I allow them to voice their frustration. And then it's about, okay, is there any way that there's a solution here? Anything that you could feel that you'd walk away and say, oh, I feel okay about that. And allow them to kind of give you that information. And people just want to talk. People want to be heard. People want to be thought of as being smart. And so when you give them that latitude, it's magic. Really, it's magic, because you learn so much about how people think and how they feel. And the human experience is fascinating to me.
Did your mom hold space for you?
No.
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 She didn't listen. Who held space for you then?
Gosh. So my mother, as she's gotten older, holds a lot of space for us as her children, me and my sister.
When she was younger,
when she was younger. No, she was a mom of the 90s. And my sister's 10 years younger than me too. So I think that's an important aspect, because my sister was born in 98. So I felt a little bit more coddled, a little bit more, your emotions matter.
Your mom was 10 years older.
Exactly. As far as me, I was really, I was the oldest. I'm the oldest. So it's been learn how to navigate my home life as a kid so that I wouldn't get in trouble. So that's where I learned how to read people's feelings, attitudes, triggers, so that I wouldn't get in trouble. Now, my mother didn't abuse me. I don't misconstrue anything that I'm saying. But there were a lot of times where I was saying, okay, my mother seems to be in a little bit of a mood today. Let me make sure the dishes are clean. Let me make sure my room is clean. Let me make sure I swept the floor. Let me make sure I took out the trash so that at the end of the day, I'm not getting in trouble for something. And that's how I've kind of built my awareness of other people. And same thing with my father. So even though I didn't live with my father in his younger age had a lot of anger issues. So I can see, and I have no problem saying this, my father had a nickname. It was called Angry Fred.
Oh, man.
Because he's a Gemini. So it's a dichotomy of two personalities. And my father's the most wonderful man in the world and could be the meanest person in the world all in the span of 25 seconds. So I was also very aware of that. So as the oldest, when I would go to my dad's house, I had two younger siblings. And then at my mom's house, I had one younger sibling. My whole thought process was, how can I avoid anyone getting yelled at? How can I avoid anyone getting in trouble? And that's how I moved. And I do that to this day. When working in corporate America, if I could sense that one of my managers was having a bad day. Okay, how can I avoid trouble? Or how can I help my team avoid trouble? It's just how I move. So I didn't get a lot of space, but I ended up going to therapy when I was 14. And
On how? How'd you end up in therapy at 14?
That's a really long story. I mean, I guess we have time. It's not that long.
Yeah,
story.
not that story. And then we will. So, yeah.
I got in trouble when I was 13. I was getting bullied a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I was taught as a kid, again, because I think my mother, because she wasn't American, she was kind of afraid.
Mm-hmm.
I was taught as a kid that you never fight, you don't ever get suspended, don't ever get in trouble, just keep your head down, you'll be fine. And I was getting bullied on the bus. And this kid, I was growing my hair out back when I had hair to get braids, because everyone wanted to be Allen Iverson then. And he would come up behind me and like grab my hair, and it really bothered me, and he did it for like weeks at a time. And I snapped and said some things I shouldn't have said. None of them were true. It was just me being a kid and being angry. But the bus driver overheard me, and she reported me to the principal. And I ended up getting suspended for 3 days. And my mother didn't know that I was being bullied, because I wasn't the type. I didn't come home and say, "Oh, someone made me sad today." Right? It was, how was school? Oh, everything was great. My grades are good. This happened. Like, it was all the positives, because again, I wanted to not add anything that was going to cause any tension. And she was like, when I got suspended, they came pick me up from schools. My parents, since I've been born, since they got divorced, have probably been in the room 3 times with me together. It's something I avoid at all costs.
Me too.
I avoid it at all costs.
It hasn't gotten any better.
No, it hasn't. It has not. So this is one of those times where they all came over to our house. So I had my mom, my stepfather, my dad, my stepmom, and my 3 siblings that, and now that they're older, they sometimes hang out, but like they never really hung out. And they all had a conversation as if I wasn't there in the room
about your suspension,
about my suspension and what they were going to do. And the decision was I was going to go to therapy. So I started going to therapy. I love therapy, by the way. Everyone should do it.
Wow. Sorry, fascinating on so many levels.
Yeah.
So that, I mean, did that help you?
Yes.
Kind of be a better manager and more aware, and at a young age?
It helped me with confidence.
Wow.
Helped me with confidence. Helped me understand that I was being disrespected wasn't okay.
Mm.
Um,
And taught you how to handle.
How to handle it. And well, not even taught me how to handle it, just gave me the tools to learn how to handle it for myself. Because I'm still not someone who, if someone says something to me, I bow up and I'm trying to scare them, right? I'm someone who is going to try to communicate through the process and the situation, or walk away from the situation if I need to. And that helps me with leadership. Because in conflict resolution, and especially in work environments, conflict always happens. And if you're able to identify the person who's going to yell and bow up, you're able to keep them calm through the conflict. And as you're keeping them calm, that gives space for the person that might be a little bit more timid to say what they're actually thinking. And now it's about finding a meeting of the mind so that you can come up with a resolution to the conflict.
Genius. You're going to be a great parent.
I like to think so. Hopefully one day. But yeah, so no, therapy just helped me process my own emotions and recognize that I can't hold everything in. I have to communicate. And communication is huge. It's huge in life and it's huge in leadership. And that's why I think leadership is so important. And that's why I'm so passionate about it, because in order to be a better human, you have to be, to some degree, a decent leader, because you're always going to be, people are leading someone somewhere, whether you're leading your household, whether you're leading your family, whether you're leading your friends. And when I first got the sales job I was in, they used to say, well, do you ever sell your friends on what restaurant to go to? And that's how they try to convince that everyone's a salesperson. And I hated that analogy, because I'm not selling a restaurant. To me, it was so mundane. But I understand leading your friend group, right? And saying, hey, this is probably the best place we should go, but also listening to what they're saying to say, okay, you think that this is a better place. Let's find a in-between place and let's go. If that makes sense. I kind of rambled there. But I think leadership is the vehicle to a better society, a better culture. And I don't think we have leaders in a lot of leadership positions. I think we have people who are self-serving. We have some managers who manage. But we don't have leaders in positions of authority or power. And a lot of these organizations don't have leaders in that middle area. They have people that are just figuring out how to try to get to that next level, are afraid of getting fired and losing their income that is taking care of their family. So they're moving in fear. And that needs to change in our culture. And that's what I want to help impact.
And I mean, that's what I feel like the rethreaded process is. Yeah, right? Like moving out of fear into possibility and courage and taking responsibility and ownership of whatever situation you're in.
Exactly.
No matter your level.
Exactly.
Seeing people. That's so good. So do you have we ask each guest to kind of share like a full circle moment in your life, like these threads that you've seen throughout your life, like with your parents, and kind of like come full circle when you're older.
So I wish I could do one with my parents, but I don't have one in my head. Mm-hmm. What I actually have in my head is something that I was actually talking to my wife about recently. And she brought it up because she's the creative one in our relationship. She's the smart one in our relationship, to be honest. So my wife worked for me at one point. Mm-hmm. She was an intern when I was working in Gainesville. She went to UF. And at that time, I was dating someone. She was dating someone. Nothing fun or scandalous, to be completely honest. But one day she came into the office that I was managing and that she was working at, and she was crying. And she was the first one there. I think it was maybe like 6:45 in the morning. And I'm like, oh, what's wrong? And she's like, nothing, because she doesn't always tell what her feelings are. But I could look at her and the age that she was, that it probably was a boy issue, right? It's always a boy issue. So I looked at her. I was like, well, it looks like you need a hug. So can I give you a hug? And she was like, yes. And I gave her a hug and I said, boys are terrible. They're always going to break your heart. But it's not because they're doing it on purpose. It's going to be okay. And I left it at that. She stopped crying, went on with our day, right? And fast forward to she's no longer working for me and we're still working for the same company. We end up started dating and blah, blah, blah. We end up getting married. And we were talking about what's the moment where you knew that I was a good person, right? And that was where the conversation was. And we gave the same moment. It was that moment, right? It was, I knew you were a good person in that moment because you were being vulnerable. I can see it. And you were receptive to someone helping you. And she's like, and I knew you were a good person because you saw that I was vulnerable and you took the time to try to give me some comfort. And that to me was a real full circle moment because at this point we've been married. I always get this wrong, and it's because we technically have two wedding dates. But in 2019, how do we have two wedding dates? We got married at the court of the.
Okay. I was like, oh no, that's another podcast.
No, it's easy. It's easy. We just got married early, and then we had a wedding a year later. But
And then how long have you known each other?
I met her when she was 22, so 11 years. And we've been married since 2019. And it's just that kind of full circle moment of we were on the same path to meet, and we did. And it wasn't something that was like, oh, this is the person I'm going to date or anything. It was, we became friends. We became actual friends after we stopped working together. And it's kind of lovely. And for us to have that same moment where it kind of connected for us, I thought was special.
So cool.
Yeah.
Because I bet that is still what you value in each other.
I think so. I mean, we you grow, you evolve. I think we both value that we work well together when we're locked into working well together. And then, how people have those ups and downs, but she's still to this day my best friend, and it's fun. It's fun experiencing life with her. And it's also fun. Something I enjoy is figuring out how she works still to this day, because we do evolve and we're different people, and understanding little nuances that are new that I might have not recognized before. It's always fun.
So I always feel like at some point in the conversation there is a clear picture of the person I'm sitting with. And I feel like your purpose, your whatever it is, I feel like you have curiosity with joy.
Yes.
And there is like a spark about you that I just think this curiosity is going to take you wherever you need to go. And just keep steady, keep disciplined in your curiosity.
I will certainly try, and I agree. I love figuring out and learning about people and learning what drives them, what motivates them, and what makes them tick. Because everything I learn about someone, I learn a little bit about myself.
Yeah. And that curiosity will make you a great husband, a great friend, great manager, a great leader. If you're a parent one day, great parent.
That's the goal.
I mean, because really we all just want to be seen.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
You're 100% right. And most people who feel disgruntled or discouraged, especially in the work atmosphere, it's because they don't feel seen. It's because they don't feel heard. They feel ignored. And giving people that opportunity to not feel that way is big.
And all it takes is a little courage.
Yeah.
And intentionality of time and space. Well, thank you, Aaron. This was great. One last word from you. What is your final piece of advice for people listening? We have really amazing listeners, deeply good progressive people who want to be better and make the world better, what is your advice to them?
I would absolutely suggest reading The Servant as a Leader by Robert K. Greenleaf. It is a collection of essays that he wrote starting in 1970, and he was an executive with AT&T back in like the 20s and worked his way up, and when he retired he started writing about what type of leaders need to be at our institutions. And if you read his essays, even though they were written almost 50 years ago, more than 50 years ago, they still resonate today. And that's what we need in our culture, is elevating the servants at our organizations to leadership roles and allowing them to serve the mission.
I love it. I'll take it. So, listeners, don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, all the things. So go out into the world and be who you're created to be. Thank you.